Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Passionpreneur series, your number one spot for entrepreneurs, creatives, and thought leaders. I am so honored to have today's guest, Oleg Lougheed, on the show. We have a very interesting relationship. It's been very short. We met on LinkedIn, but I tell you, when our first conversation, by the time our first conversation ended, I knew that I needed to have this man on this show to share his story, his mission, his passion, everything. It just touches on so much of what I want to give to the world, and I want to share back to using your story to empower you and just building upon that. As you know, if you've been following, the theme this month is your mess is your message. And this just seems so appropriate, so fitting. So Oleg, thank you so much for your time today, for joining us. I would love to just hand the mic over to you, the invisible mic. Please introduce yourself and let's just jump right in.
Absolutely. Well, before I even have the opportunity to introduce myself, I'd like to thank you for creating a space and an opportunity for us to share this space. And the reason why is because of this. This morning, I had a realization that something that came to mind, and I actually wrote it down here in front of me, and it is treat each encounter like it may be your last. And the reason why I say that is because oftentimes, in my opinion, we don't truly know when will be our last time seeing someone and if that will be the ultimate last time that we see someone. So I think choosing to go into conversations with an open mind and without any assumptions or expectations of what it needs to be just creates that genuine space where we can actually support each other without having an agenda of what that support may seem like. And that's where I think what really stood out to me from my initial interaction with you is understanding the importance of going into a space without an agenda, without all the research that we can do, but also just stepping into it and knowing that these are two human beings that are meant to connect because we're choosing to accept that as a reality in our lives. Back to your question of who am I? The way that I choose to answer it is kind of two-way approach. The philosophical approach of who am I is I genuinely believe that I am a seed to someone else's garden. And what I mean by that is my story is so much more than to be kept for me. It is an entry point for other people to relate to and understand that whatever the challenges and hardships and adversities they have faced within their lives, there are lessons and there are takeaways to be learned within each and every single one of those. Right. For me, it has been a lifelong journey of uncovering what those lessons are. And the other thing I'll mention is this did not happen overnight. Brief disclaimer. This took many years to discover. This took many questions to uncover that truth beyond the adversity. For the longest time, I was that individual who looked at certain adversities and continued to ask myself the question of why me? Why was I the one that had to go through this? Why was I the one that had to experience all the different forms of loss throughout my life? And over time, what I realized was that the answer to that question didn't have to be as complex as I made it to be. And if it wasn't you, then who else? Or why not you? And so for those that are listening to the show, I would like to ask a similar question. And that is, you've gone and you've been through many challenges in life. Why not you? Why not you that was meant to go through all those obstacles? And why not you that is meant to serve all the people surrounding you through the lens that you were able to understand those experiences right now? Beyond that, when it comes to the professional approach and the desired LinkedIn approach of how we're expected to answer the question of who we are, is I started an organization 3 years ago called Overcoming Odds. Initially, it started as a space for people of similar backgrounds, adoptees, foster youth, to be able to share their experiences and their stories. The reason why I wanted to create that space around the story aspect is because I firmly believe that our stories are the most valuable currency that's available to us. And the reason why I believe that is because everything that I have achieved within the time that I've had on this planet has been done through my story. There have been moments where I didn't have the financial means to open certain doors. There have been moments where I didn't have other forms of resources to have certain conversations. What allowed me to have those things was my story. And how I understood my story was an entry point to some of those earlier dialogues. The thing about your story that's also fascinating to me is that for however long I used to think that your story was only about your past, and more so your distant past, the things that you experienced as a child, the hardships that you faced during that time. But in reality, what I've realized over time is that your story is so much more than that. Your story is also about the now, the daily things that you do, the obstacles that you face right now in the moment. Those are just as valid as the hardships that you had in the prior years. And that's one thing that I choose to use as far as my voice and my story to help people understand, is that your story is all of the years leading up to now. And it's going to be all the years that you have beyond this. So it's not a specific moment. When we talk about our past, your past is literally the moment that we experienced 2 or 5 minutes ago, or half an hour ago. And so I think there's a lesson to be learned within each one of those experiences. And that's what I wanted to create with this platform of Overcoming Odds, is an understanding that no matter how difficult the obstacles we might have had in our lives, that there's still things to be grateful for. There's still lessons that we can learn from each one. And for me, that journey started with the question of, when I looked at some of those challenging experiences, and for however long, I did live that victim mindset. I did live in the moment and thinking, how could this person have done this? But then what I started to realize was that because I was given so much attention and focus to that side, I also began to realize that I can give the same attention and focus to the other side. And that's where I think my journey completely shifted and transformed, and went from a victim mindset to almost quote unquote hero mindset. And that's where those questions of, what did I learn from those challenging times? What are the lessons that I'm applying every single day? What are the takeaways that are literally walking side by side with me along the journey that I'm on right now? And that's where my life shifted. My life shifted completely. And I became significantly more grateful for life. I started to look life as something that is just extremely fascinating to experience and to live, because none of this is given. When you even think about the concept of how long we have on this planet, and oftentimes, in my opinion, we'll look at it as far as we have until 100, 120 years old, whatever the number may be.
If you're lucky.
Let's
Yeah.
face it.
Yeah.
Is that even real?
Right.
None of that nothing about that statement is given. And I would even argue that very little about that is even earned. I don't have control over how long I may be on this planet. You look at some of the other people throughout life. You look at people who literally did not even make it, that passed during birth. You look at people like Kobe Bryant, died in their 40s. And so many others that have died at multiple other age ranges. And so I think choosing to live every single day as something to be grateful for, and understanding that if there's anything that I have control over, it is right now. It's in the moment. It's being here. It's being present. It's choosing to share what I know, but also knowing that there's so much more that I don't know in this lifetime. And that's an answer that I choose to be comfortable with, is I don't know. It's not all about the yes and the no. There's also this spot in between, and that's, I don't know certain things. And I think with that mindset, it puts me in a space where I can continue to learn, continue to explore, and also understand that I don't have to know all the answers. that other people opinions and perspectives are just as valid as mine.
It's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to just go back just a little bit to touch
Mm-hmm.
on a few things. First thing you said was this wasn't overnight.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And I so respect that you said that, because I think a lot of people, and maybe even this audience, might feel like, oh, well, you're just able to get over it. You know, it must not have been that serious. But it really doesn't matter. Trauma is trauma.
Yes.
Whatever you've experienced between, I believe it's between 0 and 7,
Mm-hmm.
has impacted who you are. And it's fortunate as adults, fortunate, unfortunate, as adults, that
Mm-hmm.
we then have the wherewithal, the capability of now processing all of
Mm-hmm.
that. And like you said, reframing it. And that, I mean, that in itself isn't an overnight thing. I mean, to look at an event that happened to you as neutral can take years of work, years of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to just take a moment and just ask you, what were some of the things that that you got into? Was it books? Was it therapy? Was it a certain organization you joined, and
Mm-hmm.
mentorship? What were the things that helped you?
For me, the things that made the biggest difference, at least the ones that I'm aware of at this particular moment, was first sharing my story. And in sharing my story, I understood that there are multiple layers to it. When I first started to share the story, I do remember how I would take people into the most graphic scenes of my past. And the thing that I realized over time was that it's one thing to take people in, it's a whole other thing to take them out. So when I took them into those experiences and I sometimes left them there and having them maybe relate in a way that they may not have had to do before because they haven't experienced some of those things in their past. But what I didn't understand was the importance of also taking them out, showing them how I got out of those circumstances. So that was the first thing. Sharing my story played a big role. The second thing, when it comes to the different resources that you mentioned, there are some books that played a big role. One of them is Think and Grow Rich.
Mhm.
Another book that changed my perspective was The Alchemist.
Yes, oh, I love that book.
It's a phenomenal read. And then there was a movie that I watched on Netflix, and I believe it's still available. It's called I'm Not Your Guru with Tony Robbins.
Yes.
Completely shifted my perspectives. And the reason why is because, in particular, when I watch I'm Not Your Guru, I remember watching it 2 or 3 times in a row, just literally on repeat, sitting there behind my laptop, crying nonstop. And the reason why I was crying is because it resonated so much with me. I saw myself as someone who was in a similar position of Tony in being able to impact lives in a similar fashion. And there's a moment in that film where there's an encounter that he has with a person in the audience where the person describes her relationships with her relationship with her father. And she says something along the lines of how she didn't have the best relationship with him, how there was so much negativity and bad and all the things that she resented him for.
Right.
And then Tony asked a question which got me thinking and actually shifted my mind completely. He said, for all the bad things that you are giving him energy and time for, what are the good things? He made her flip to the other side and
Yes.
acknowledge all of the good things that he had done for her. Unspokenly, spokenly, that doesn't matter. And in that moment, I also had a breakthrough of my own. And it was in regard to my birth mom. For the longest time, I looked at her as someone who was an alcoholic, someone who truly was not capable of taking care of me, and actually passed on that responsibility to my sister at a relatively young age. And what I realized was that for all those years that I chose to look at her as how the society paints the image of an alcoholic, that's when I also realized that, well, what are the good things that she's passed on to me? What are the lessons that she's passed on through that experience? And one of the lessons that I've shared many times was the ability to be driven. I firmly believe that all the times that I went out there looking for her on the street and I came up short, sometimes I came up short 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
The message that I continue to repeat in my head around the question of, if I just talk to one more person, I may find her. who else can I talk to? Is the same exact message that I repeat on a daily basis now. So I think your point of having those 0 to 7 or whatever the science may say years, it's formative because they do play a big role. And if I go far enough and try and ask myself similar questions during those years, I might be able to identify the origin of some of these principles that I choose to live by every single day. And so when it comes to resources, what I've learned is that the resources are there. It's about how do you make yourself open to those resources and how do you maximize those resources at hand. The books already exist. The people are already there. It's how do I open myself enough that I can let that information inside of me and process it in a way that I can identify steps and actionable takeaways that I can go with. So trauma is interesting. And the other thing I would like to point out is this. Oftentimes when I share my story, especially the first 12 years and the adversity that I faced during that, what I'll hear from some people is that, man, I have not lived through half of that, so I should not complain. What I started to do recently is expand upon that. And that is, I'm not here to diminish your trauma. I'm not here to share my traumatic experiences so that you can feel bad about complaining about yours, when in reality, your trauma is your trauma. My trauma is my trauma. We didn't have control over the cards that we were dealt. If there's anything that I think we might have control over, it is the ability to reshuffle that deck and pick new cards out of the stack. I think there's a choice. I think there's a choice that we can make throughout life. But the cards that we're dealt with, oftentimes we didn't have control over. And so when I think about my circumstances that I went through at a very young age, the difference between that person back then and the person now is the series of choices that I made. Series of choices that I made with an understanding that I didn't view the world for what it was, but rather for what I aspired it to be. Yeah. That was my continued belief all along. And that's how I continue to view the world. So when we talk about the uncertainty, the fear, whatever else that we're going through right now, I don't choose to look at it for what it is. Rather, I look at it as an inspiration for what it could be. And I think there's a big difference. So long story short, everything goes back to reframing. Yes. Everything goes back to perspective.
Yes.
And the perspective can always shift. And I believe that in any given moment, in any given circumstance, you have both options available to you. The fear, and then you have the possibility.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I try and I live every day, and I encourage my closest friends and family around me, live in possibility. Live in what could be, because that is the future. And every day, every moment, every decision that you're making, you're shaping that future for yourself and for others. And especially now in today's environment, what's going on politically, climate-wise, everything. It's like everything matters. Everything is an opportunity for us to shift our thinking and make a change.
And I also think how we choose to pass on that information is important.
Yes.
For me, one of the conscious things that I'm trying to do as often as I can is understand how am I passing on what's happening around me. So if it's elements of fear, how am I processing that? And then how am I projecting that onto you? Am I passing on the same information that I was passed on without thinking about it, how it may impact you? Or am I choosing to reshape that fear into something else? Am I choosing to reshape that fear into a space through which you may not be in that fear, but you can look at it as something else. You can look at it as an opportunity to do something different. I do believe that that comes with an increased level of self-awareness, without a doubt. But that's something that has really been on my mind for quite some time now, is how do you choose to pass on information? Yes, we might be experiencing certain elements of fear, but in reality, I think that also begs a question. What is fear? How real is it? And how real is real?
Yes.
Or is it only as real as the story that you formed around it? And if that's the case, considering that you were the author of that story, can you rewrite that story?
Yeah.
Can you change the narrative into something completely different? So I think that's where the power of choice really comes in and helps us understand that if we chose that narrative to begin with, can we choose to rewrite that narrative into something completely different?
I feel like this is a perfect segue to your mission statement. Actually, it's on your website, Overcoming Odds. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe it's overcomingodds.com. Is that
That today. Mm-hmm.
but your mission statement really caught me. RDNA,
Mm-hmm.
resilience, discovery, network, and authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
How did you choose those words?
Well, how it all started was I remember a friend of mine, her and I sat down and we kind of looked at all the work that we've done. And what I firmly believed as far as what we try to create between the different spaces within Overcoming Odds are different opportunities where people can engage with one another through their own story. For the longest time, as long as I can remember, I remember going into different meetups or different groups where you talk about who you are and you grow professionally and personally. Well, one of the things that I felt was missing was this true ability to be who you really are. And that's express yourself in whatever fashion that you might have an understanding of yourself at this particular time. So much of it was based on what do you do for a business? And that answer labeled you as far as who you are to your fullest degree. I chose to challenge that because I don't believe in that. I don't believe that whatever it is that you do at this chapter of your life is the ultimate answer to who you are. I think it's just an expression, one of many expressions that you have right now. So when we were looking at what we do and we came up with our DNA, it really made sense as we broke down each one of those, because I believe that when I can connect to who I am and better understand the different components that make up me, then I'm able to connect more with others, because then I'm leading from a place of curiosity. I'm going beyond the job title. I'm going beyond whatever label I associated my existence with or someone else passed on to me. Because here's the thing that also happens throughout life, or that has happened throughout my life, is that there were certain labels that were essentially given to me by other people. Orphan, adoptee, whatever it may be. And those might be true experiences that happened. But what I realized was that I don't have to live those labels. I don't have to relive them. They're always going to be a part of me, but I don't have to choose to answer that question of who am I with any of those.
Right.
But there are other things that I can choose to answer it with. So authenticity is a big role of what we do. And I truly believe that in sharing your story in whichever way that you understand it is an entry point to that, to living that authentic life. Network is also a big role. And the reason why is because I don't believe there is such thing as self-made. I believe there's always someone in front of you that's opening doors for you. Always. You may not be aware of them now, but there's always some individual that is opening a door for you. And maybe you just haven't met them yet. But just understanding that one day you will meet them and you'll find that door, that's what keeps me going. So when it comes to network and the people that surround you and that inspire you to go after your goals, your aspirations, whatever it is that you envision, it's everything. That's what helps you move. That's what helps me move forward in life. With the network though, I think there's a challenge. And that challenge is this. I do believe that people come into your life for a reason, a season, and a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge of that is you never know who that person is and what their time frame may be.
Right.
The person may come into your life once, you may choose to associate them as a reason, but then they may reappear into your life again 5 or 10 years down the road. And that's where I think, going back to how you and I chose to open this conversation with, staying open-minded is key. Because if I choose to be open-minded and not box a particular connection into a reason, a season, or a lifetime, that's when I allow them to reappear again as time allows.
Yes.
And they can come into your life 10 years down the road when you need it most. So people come into your life at different phases. They'll stay in your life at different phases. But I also do believe that the network is extremely important in helping you get to wherever it is. And one of the things that a mentor of mine has taught me, which is directly related to networks and just progress in life, is I remember one day he said, just focus on the next step. Whoever comes into your life right now, those are the people that were meant to be in your life to help you get to the next step. And then the step beyond that, you might have different people that come into your life. Mm-hmm. And then the same process, the step beyond that, and the step beyond that. So I think the skill that I've learned throughout that journey is not developing levels of dependency on certain people and depending on them to be there the whole way, but rather just understanding that this person came into my life, whatever the purpose may be, I don't know, but can they help me get to that next step, just one step ahead of where I'm trying to go. And that's where I think this level of accountability and responsibility doesn't become so overwhelming, where I'm going to put all my dreams and aspirations, the weight of them, onto one individual. And if they don't deliver it, well, then I'm sitting there and blaming and complaining about why they didn't do the things. Because in reality, people can only help in whatever capacity that they're able to right now. Some might solely be there to just help you open up your eyes to what you haven't seen before. That might be their purpose. Others may say one line during a whole half hour, 2-hour conversation. They'll shift your perspective completely. Other people may make connections. Others may commit to action. So you never know how the person is going to add value to your life. But I do believe that every person can add value to your life.
I love that. And that's such a great space to stop on. Mm-hmm. It's so true. I believed that for a long time. The reason, the season, as far as people coming in and out of your life, it's so true. And when you release yourself from what it should look like, mm-hmm. the role they should play in your mm-hmm. life, it just opens up to so much freedom. Mm-hmm. And meeting people where they are and loving them where they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're all different chapters. We're all different chapters of our lives. The other thing that I've learned in regard to the different chapters and our different aspirations, think about it this way. However many people there are on this planet, 7.5, 7.6 billion, whatever the number is. Isn't it fascinating how, at least in my opinion, I haven't met a single person that has the same exact dream? How crazy is that?
I've gotten thousands, close, not the same.
Thousands of people. I got very close.
Yeah.
I've gotten in the same ballpark.
Yes.
But as far as the vision of it is still different. And I think that's so fascinating that you can still meet people who might have similar dreams, but yet they're still different. Yeah. And so I think it goes back to the point of choosing to meet people where they're at. And also understanding that not everyone wants what you want. And that's okay.
That's the
people
beauty.
Have different variations, and that's the beauty of it. Yeah. Is that we may have different variations of our dream, but yet we can still be of service to each other to accomplish our own visions of our dreams.
That's true. That's true. So true. My alarm went off. This is real time, people. Oleg, thank you. Thank you so much. You have dropped so much wisdom on us today. I'm putting this out there right now. I
Mm-hmm.
have you back on here because I know you have so much more to share with the world, with this audience, and I want to stay connected for as long
Absolutely.
as I possibly can.
Absolutely. Thank you for
So,
creating a space, without
or
a doubt.
please tell us how we can stay connected to you.
The best way, I think, personally, would be through LinkedIn. That's where I'm on the most. Beyond that, if you're looking to connect with our organization, anything that we're doing would be through social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and then the website, as you mentioned earlier, is overcomingodds.today, not .com. And the reason why it's .today is because I firmly believe that the process can start today of overcoming whatever the challenges you may have in life. And through that space, what we've been able to create is this feeling that you're not alone. There's someone else along your journey that have walked a similar path. May not be the same exact step, the same exact path, but that's not the point. The point is that there's some other human being who has walked a similar path and they did it, they made it, or they're currently making it through the support of other people and the support of other narratives.
And what are your social media handles?
At Overcoming Odds across the board.
Instagram, Facebook, all the good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Oleg, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to leave us with before you
I
sign
think the biggest thing that I would like to pass on to people is never say you can't do something in life. And the reason why is because I think everything's a matter of perspective. So the times where I didn't believe I couldn't do something, I started to challenge that. And it is, who's to actually say that you can't do it? Is it the outside environment or is it you? And if it's you, then that's where I believe you can change that narrative.
Yes.
So I'm actively trying to put myself in positions where I choose not to accept whether I can or can't do something before I try it. I think that effort is the thing that proves it, whether you can or not necessarily can't, but just haven't figured out just yet how to do that thing. So that's what I'd like to leave your audience with is never say you can't do something in life before trying it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oleg. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys, once again, truth bombs all over the place. I will make sure to include in the interview notes, episode notes below, ways to connect with Oleg and more information on his wonderful organization, his podcast, and everything else you got coming up in the works. Stay connected. This is the Passionpreneur series, and I'm your host, Brandy, and I will see you again really soon. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, you guys. Bye, Oleg.